Zoning in. Precise, complete, and informative. This is your talk show, Zoning In with Deshelle, Christina, Kenisha, guest Elizabeth and Annette, and your host, Kenisha Davis. Zoning In, your dose of fresh thoughts.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Zoning In, where we zone in on your dose of fresh thoughts. I'm your host, Kenisha Davis. And on tonight's episode, we will be zoning in on a very important statement that will be explored by our competent panel alongside our guest who will be providing personal testimonies. We have on our panel today, Ms. Tashel Christian. She's a substance abuse counselor. We have a theologian, Ms. Christina Williams Gray. We have a social worker, Ms. Kenisha Powell, and our guest, Ms. Elizabeth Wright and Mrs. Annette Edwards Blake. They will be sharing their experiences with us. Now, before I get into it, I'm going to read something from Dr. Stephen Downsend, who is a drug expert. And he says that drugs are chemicals or substances that changes the way our bodies work. Some are medicines that help people when doctors prescribe them, and many have no medical use or benefits. Now, when taken, and drugs are usually taken through injections or through swallowing, abused drugs, they can find their way into the bloodstream, and from there, they move to the brain and to other parts of the body. In the brain, the drugs may intensify or dull your senses, change how alert or how sleepy we feel, and sometimes decrease our physical pain. Now, because of the way these drugs work on the brain, they affect the ability to make healthy choices and decisions. Even drinking alcohol makes people more likely to get involved in dangerous situations like driving under the influence or having unprotected sex. Now, although substances can feel good at first, they can do a lot of harm to the body and the brain. Drinking alcohol, smoking, or using tobacco, taking illegal drugs, even sniffing glue, all damage the human body. So with this knowledge, I want my panelists to finish this statement for me. Now, a person in a relationship with a chemically dependent person should, what say you, Ms. Christian?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So the first thing I am going to say is that they should not become an enabler or an reinforcer. That is definitely not what they want to do. So before I delve into what exactly an enabler is, I'm going to go on and just give you a brief synopsis of exactly what my take on our relationship and a household is supposed to be like. Now, basically, our intimate relationships are supposed to be safe havens, right? And our homes are places that provide shelter from danger. However, being in a relationship with a partner that has an addiction to alcohol or drugs can lead to an unhealthy relationship with emotional stress and abuse. Now, it is a second nature to want to help a loved one in times of trouble. Am I right?
True.
Right. So the natural tendency to want to help someone you care for applies to anyone, basically parents, siblings, and in this case, spouses. And it is a good thing. However, when a loved one is addicted to drugs or alcohol, the impulse to fix things may become toxic. So in a word, offering excessive help and support is basically called enabling.
Okay, so an enabler then is someone who, you know, would be providing you with the drugs that you crave. They are like supporting your habit. Is that it?
It could be, it's in a sense. However, enabling is more of somebody just doing too much. They're basically, if it is that the individual is a alcoholic, right? That's a chemical. That's their choice of chemical, right?
Yes.
You know that they are an alcoholic. You are not an alcoholic, but what you do is you continue to encourage drinking around this person. You carry out this person and you bring this person to a bar. That's enabling and reinforcing. So if it is that you want to help and you are pure in wanting to help, you can't do something like that. Now, an enabling behavior is very, very common amongst individuals who have a loved one battling with an active addiction. Now, as they watch the person's life implode and the negative consequences associated with their actions pile up, there is an internal impulse to help them right their path. Now, while the impulse to help is a noble one, it can actually do more harm than good in the long run. And Miss Davis, what is also important for people to note is not to try to, as I mentioned before, be excessive in helping. And what that does is turn that person into turn their behavior into what is classified by Dr. Murray Joseph as a savior complex. Now, Dr.
Miss Christian, I don't mean to cut you, Miss Christian, but I need the layman to understand what we're talking about. So can you explain to us what is a savior complex?
Right, I'm definitely going to explain that. So now, according to Dr. Murray Joseph, a psychologist in Washington, D.C., a savior tendency can involve fantasies of omnipotence. Basically, in other words, you believe someone out there is capable of single-handedly making everything better, and that person happens to just be you. So the individual feels that they are the savior, they are the one, they're gonna go around and save people. And basically the underlying belief of these individuals is that it is a noble thing to do. They believe they are somehow better than others because they help people at all time without getting anything back. While motives may or may not be pure, their actions are not helpful to the individuals that are involved.
It's more harmful.
So, right. Now, the problem is that they're trying to save someone does not allow the individual to take responsibility for his and her action, and to also develop their own internal motivation to stop or quit.
Thank you, Miss Christian. A lot of information there. But I need to also ask Miss Theologian, Miss Williams-Gray, Mrs. Williams-Gray, a person in a relationship with a chemically dependent person should finish my statement, Miss Williams-Gray.
Okay, thank you very much for having me, Mrs. Davis. I do appreciate you providing me with this platform to share my views as to whether this person is having a relationship with a substance and what is it that they should do. What I think a person having this relationship with a substance is definitely not to do is try their best not to make it a daily lifestyle. Try to curb their behavior in any way possible, although addiction may seem like unbearable, uncontrollable behavior for one to do, but we here as a theological And as a body of the Christ, we know that the Christ does not want us to harm our body in any form of way, because it's considered as the temple of God. And what I will say though, in assisting these persons that has difficulty and challenges using these substances, what I will, as a theological, we tend to go in helping this person on a biological. I must apologize for that. But what I was saying is that in order for us as the body of the church, we have to assist the person on a psychological and biological, and also on a social perspective. And on the other hand, we then add the spiritual perspective, because you have to see, how is it that, what are the causes that push a person to use its substance? Is it emotional? Is it psychological? What is it that has impact a person's lifestyle to this change? Usually, as the body of the church, we always empower a person to know that there's always a God. There's always someone that we can speak to. Even if you find that your friends or your peers are not listening, the God that you serve, whatever religion there is that you serve, there is a God that provides a listening ears to you.
All right.
I'm also going to go ahead and say that in providing this kind of atmosphere, because persons suffer with addiction on an alcoholic level and also on a narcotic level as well. If it's an alcohol, it's called AA. If it's a narcotic, it's called NA. So persons tend not to like these kind of groups, but we view this kind of group as, for instance, you go to confess. Anything that you're struggling with, everybody in the group has the same issues and has the same problem. So there's no reason for you to feel ashamed of what you're struggling with.
Okay.
Yes, because everyone is struggling. You're comfortable in your environment. It's a way of expressing and releasing whatever it is that caused you to urge for this addiction. I must apologize for that interruption. But I must say that this group, this community group, usually these community groups, their main aim is to assist you to be the best self, your best self in the spiritual world. It's fine, because usually when persons are addicted, there's some kind of urge that they want. They're lost for something. And this substance helps to fill that gap. It does not eliminate the gap, because the fact that they have to constantly going back to this substance, there's still that emptiness. And usually it's a spiritual emptiness that they're seeking, because they're disconnected from the Spirit of God. I'm not saying whichever God there is that they're serving, there's some form of disconnection in that spiritual world, and that's what the substance does, fill that gap that they're lost in. So we always encourage persons to say, go out in your community, have that group, that bond with your members that have the same issue and the same struggle as you, to let you release and to find your way back to Jesus.
Thank you, dear Miss Theologian. So she's saying we should encourage the partner to join a group, whether it's the AA group, that's the name of it, or the NA group.
Yes, which means alcoholic anonymous. I must apologize, or the narcotic anonymous.
Anonymous. Okay, so there you have it, people. But what we're going to do, we're going to make some money. We're going to go on a break, and we will be right back with you.
tired of running around with bags? Do you want to be acid-free? Well, we at Yogo will turn your dreams into reality. We offer the best customer service island-wide. We will deliver your packages right at our doorstep. Call us today at 876-3946 or WhatsApp us at 876-49523. Remember, Yogo, your orders, our goal.
A person in a relationship with a chemically dependent person should be alert, understanding, and supportive. It is difficult enough to be in a relationship, getting to know your partner, and being able to communicate. Individuals who are chemically dependent are at times using this method as a coping mechanism. As a partner and as someone who cares, you should be understanding. Look at the situation from their perspective. Why is it that they need these chemicals to function? Why are they dependent? You should also be alert. There may come a time when the situation is overwhelming and the tolerance level for these chemicals have been met. This may lead to the abuse of these chemicals, which may have significant physical, psychological, and social effect on these persons.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. I know you're enjoying the discussion, and you're going to enjoy it even more because our guest, Miss Annette Blake, is here to give us her experience with a chemically dependent person. Miss Annette Blake.
Good evening, Mrs. Davis. Thank you for having me this evening. So tonight I will be telling you about somebody I know. He has given me his permission to speak freely about his recovery process and his addiction process. So he is Mr. Tim Ryan. He is an American activist, drug abuse interventionist. He's an author and also a speaker. He is the founder and executive director of a Man in Recovery Foundation. His work was the subject of A&E series Dope Man. In July 2017, Ryan is also an author of a book called From Dope to Hope. Sorry about that. Tim Ryan struggled for over 30 years with his addiction, and he dates his addiction back to his childhood trauma. Ryan suffered from dyslexia and ADHD and was a victim of sexual abuse as a child. As an adult, Ryan abused alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, ecstasy, anything at all that can get him high. You name it, he has tried it. Ryan struggled and suffered 2 heart attacks as a result of his addiction. 8 overdosed, was held in more than 20 prison facilities, jail facilities for drug and alcohol related charges. He was, before all of this, or during all of this, he was a successful technological entrepreneur. He got divorced as a result of his drug addiction, where he lost his son and his wife, he lost his home in all of the process, in all of this. During his stay at the Sheridan Correctional Center in Florida, Ryan joined the drug and alcoholic treatment program. He became sober, attended group meetings and therapy sessions, and actively participated in the prison rehabilitation program. And as a result of his participation, he was released within 13 months for a prison sentence that he should have served for 7 years. Ryan made plans to start his own organization, offering assistance to individuals, families, communities impacted by drug and drug use. He works to expose the truth about addiction from a former addiction perspective, since he was an addict.
Okay.
Following the death of his son, because his son died in 2017. Ryan was released from prison in 2013 and has been an advocate, but unfortunately he could not have helped his son. His son died in 2017 from an overdose. And that is when he came up with the book, A Man in Recovery Foundation. This was to honor his sons. Mm-hmm. Under Ryan leadership, that organization sponsors a recovery support group for drugs addicts and their families. It provides placement in treatment centers and sober living facilities and sponsor community outreach initiative designed to raise awareness about the prevalence of drug abuse and addiction. Currently, Ryan is the National Outreach Director for Transformation, a drug and alcoholic treatment center. Before this position, he works at the Midwest Regional Outreach Currently, Ryan is the National Outreach Director for Transformation, a drug and alcohol treatment center. Before this position, he worked at the Midwest Regional Outreach Coordinator for Bryan's Treatment Center in Florida. Ryan has also referred hundreds of people with substance abuse disorder. One of his claims is that he can guarantee you that he can get anyone into treatment and keep them sober. And so far, his success rate is at 95%. He's working along with American Drug Society, a lot of foundation. He's helping to change legislation, and he wants also to be able to change people's perspective of how they treat persons who are drug addicts, seeing that his background tells it all, that what can lead to drugs. People just don't get up and just do drugs for most person. Sometimes it is because of their history. So based on his history, he wants to sensitize person about how to treat people that are addicted.
That is indeed a story from dope to hope. And what I get from that is, audience, you should get help for your spouses or loved ones who are chemically dependent, because if you realize in Ryan's story, his son became chemically dependent until he lost his life. So, but we have to move on. Time is against us. We have a social worker here, Miss Kenisha Powell. What is your take on the topic, Miss Powell? A person in a relationship with a chemically dependent person should? Go ahead, Miss Powell.
Okay, good night, everyone. Thanks very much for having me. I think it's very important to note, first of all, that drug and alcohol abuse affects millions of persons across the world. The results of the National Survey on Drug Use and Health following data 2005, you had 7.7 million persons in America alone who reported current use of illicit drugs. And in 2015, you had an estimated 27.2 in illicit drugs. So there has been a significant increase over the years. I must also add that many of these adults who abuse drugs are involved in some type of cohabitating relationship. And these partners are feeling the painful repercussions of drug abuse.
Yes.
Whether this relationship involves a marriage, a domestic partnership, or a more informal living, substance abuse affects every single person in the home and not just the individual who is addicted. Effective therapeutic interventions involve both partners as well as their children. So as Ms. Christian had stated earlier, it is very important and it is highly recommended that a person offers support to their drug abusing spouse. When they are ready to sit down and speak with their loved one, they should avoid sounding condescending or judgmental. Instead, Let them know that you are aware of the problem and you're there to offer support. You should also encourage them to seek help.
Okay.
Also, yes, so Miss Christine had also mentioned that persons, while you are there to support them, you don't want to make the mistake of being an enabler.
Yes.
Therefore, here are some very important questions you can ask yourself to ensure that you avoid this. First, am I letting the people in my life take responsibility for themselves? Am I seeking help from professionals outside of the home? And am I giving activities? If you have any further question, please contact the National Council of Drug Abuse, that is, and they will guide you accordingly.
All right. Thank you there, Ms. Powell. It's important to know, viewers and listeners, that a supporter and an enabler are two different things. An enabler will allow you to continue using the drugs, but somebody who is supporting you will want you to stop using the drug and will encourage you to get help. So an enabler and a supporter are two different individuals. But time is going, and I must get to Miss Elizabeth Wright, who has her testimony being in a relationship with someone who is chemically dependent. We only have 5 minutes on the clock, Miss Wright. You can go right ahead.
Okay, Miss Davis, thanks for having me. Well, over the past 5 years or so, I was living with a person who has been chemically dependent. Being in a relationship with a chemical dependent person, I have to support that person both mentally, physically, and psychologically. I also try to create an environment that is safe and harmonious for the family. Sometimes, to tell you the truth, it is really challenging because, yes, because the person is solely dependent on the drug instead of on the relationship and the family. It is as if you can't do without that drug, eat, drug, sleep, drug, everything. But however, I try to support that person in any decision that person makes. I also try to refer that person to get help by a counselor, social worker, or any other means to get sober. Yes. I remember one time the addiction becomes so severe, I have to ask the person to leave, because if you don't do that, you will endanger the home, the family, another person in the family. Not to leave permanently, but temporarily for the safety of the family. Yes. Sometimes at that point in time, sometimes I feel like I'm going to give up on that person, but I have to just hold the faith, because in all of this, you know, I could not just keep focusing on that person, but I have to keep focus on myself and how to manage the family and the home and all of that, and to keep the home in a safe environment. So this is my testimony for now.
Yes. So, but in the long run, did the person recover from this chemical dependence?
Yes, he went to a counseling center and he got, but it takes time.
Yes, I can imagine it does take time, because if you are dependent on a drug, it's going to take time to, you know, get independence from it.
Yes, it doesn't just happen at the same time.
Yes.
Because sometimes he goes there, and when you feel like, okay, it is over now and he's coping, he went back to it again.
Oh, I understand. But I want to thank you so much, Ms. Wright, for your testimony there. So there you have it, viewers. You ought to not be enablers. You are to be supporters. You are to get help for your spouses who are chemically dependent, and do all that you can for them. Don't give up on them is one of the cries from the theologian. Don't be judgmental. Do your best. Help your fellow brother. Help your loved ones. Help persons who are chemically dependent to get over these habits. I want to thank you for joining us tonight, and join us again next time where we zone in on your dose of fresh thoughts. Have a good night.